Welcome to Conversations for the Animals. I am Lisa Tynan with Houston PetSet, and this is the start of our 4th season of this podcast and also the beginning of our 20th year in operation. So I thought, who better to join me today than the fabulous Tena Lundquist Faust and Tama Lundquist, co-presidents of Houston PetSet, longtime leaders of this organization. Thank y'all for being on this side of the conversation.
Yay.
I'm excited to talk about, well, everything today, but we're kind of at a really exciting crossroads for a bunch of reasons in Houston. We have a new administration here in 2024. We're celebrating our 20th year. We have some big, exciting goals. We have a big soiree coming up this year. So we have a lot to talk about and get excited about. But before we look forward, I want to look back a little bit. We don't often get to sit and just sort of talk about the history of Houston PetSet and what has brought us to this point and what has changed over the years, because 20 years is a long time and a lot has changed in the landscape of animal welfare in Houston. So to start, what are some of the accomplishments and talk also a little bit about the history and how we've made these accomplishments, but what are you most proud of that Houston PetSet has accomplished over these last 20 years? Because there's a lot to be proud of. Might be hard to pick one thing.
There is. What are we most proud of? Probably the fact that we've been able to advance the cause of animal welfare in this city. There are a lot of great philanthropic endeavors, causes in Houston. A lot of the social scene is wrapped into philanthropy. But when we started doing this, animal welfare was almost virtually non-existent, except for the great CAP. Houston Humane used to have a gala, and then of course the SPCA's always had a gala. But other than that, I feel like animal welfare was kind of non-existent. And I feel like we've helped advance the cause, not just for PetSet, but just in general, and talk about how Houston is so different than a lot of cities in the U.S. and in the world in terms of the animal welfare crisis that we face. So I think that's probably in my opinion, our biggest accomplishment. I don't know if you have something different.
Was my first thought too, was just getting this on the radar of city leaders, state leaders, philanthropy, et cetera, just getting this issue out there as a legitimate cause and putting numbers and data behind it so that people know it's not just about the fluffy animals. It is about the fluffy animals. We domesticated them. We have to take care of them. But it's also about quality of life and making this an issue that Houston has to face. And I have to bring up, too, the fact that we've worked in legislation, passing 2 major bills in the last 4 years. Last 2 sessions, 4 years, is a huge accomplishment thanks to our partnership with THLN. But we know Houston philanthropic people, some of our supporters, and their push behind some of the legislation helped get these bills passed. So I would say that is a huge, and the ordinances too.
Absolutely. Local, county, state, all of that is important. So you talked about the galas and the soirees, and not everybody may know that Houston PetSet started as really just a fundraising organization. And the focus was, let's get everybody in a room, celebrate the animals, raise money, and then distribute it to our partners. So once upon a time, that was it. Yes. And now, 20 years later, we have our own programs and services here. So, I mean, do you think that has changed kind of in concert with how the landscape has changed? Or do you think you're pushing the changes a little bit more in Houston? And I guess talk a little bit about how the needs of the community have shifted and how Houston PetSet has kind of navigated that.
You're right. Houston PetSet started out as just a granting organization. We had no employees. It was all volunteer, no office space. It was really a brilliant idea on the part of the founders. And through the years, we've seen the need to strategize. And I think that that's important, that we filled a gap. There are a lot of great rescue groups out there. There are a lot of people doing really important work. But for us to kind of fill this space between supporters, philanthropy, needs on the streets, the shelters, the ordinances, I think that was really important. What was the question?
I was just going to ask that too.
Honestly, it was a long and winding question. I think really what I'm getting at is it started with this very narrow focus of fundraising. And over these 20 years, we've taken on these programs and these services. And a lot of that has been in response to natural disasters,
right,
health crises, things like that. And I will say from a point of pride, I think Houston PetSet has been really adaptable in those situations and been able to sort of step back and say, okay, fundraising still going strong. We still do that. We've had our biggest year ever in 2023. But what else can we do to serve the community?
Yeah.
So maybe what would be interesting is to hear a little bit of how each program kind of came to be as the needs of the community changed.
I think in 2012, you and I were on the streets and it was like a light bulb moment. We are not going to solve this. Well, number one, we needed to solve it because we realized all of the work going into this and the problem wasn't getting better.
Yeah.
And then we said, well, let's solve it. We're problem solvers by nature. And then we said, we can't solve it without having the data. So that was a turning point for Houston PetSet. And we went through strategic planning and we built 6 pillars upon which we focus and work and always go to those 6 pillars when we get questions from the community, when an organic thing happens that we're called upon, does it match our 6 pillars and what does it fit under and what should we do? But yeah, the programs really came about organically. Transport because of Hurricane Harvey, and spay and neuter because of our great friends at Fido Fixers, and just a chance meeting with somebody at an event, and they said, do you know about Fido Fixers, and connected us, and we're like, yeah, we need spay and neuter. So now we offer free services to the community.
Right.
You know, advocacy came about because we know that changing the laws will change the people. If we can't educate, we have to legislate. So that was super important to us. And collecting data collection, we have to show why this is an important cause for our city, for our community, for our state. When we've got millions of people suffering because they cannot safely walk on the streets because there are packs of animals running, that's a quality of life issue. It's not just an animal issue. Now it's a people issue.
And also our community service, you know, that is really important too, whether we're helping owned animals in the community, you know, helping pay for vet services. It costs far less to provide veterinary services for a dog or a cat than it does to run it through bark.
Right.
And then the cruelty has been really important too. And to your point, it has been organic, and not just organic, but I feel like divinely led. And we do pivot. We are an organization that's not afraid to, wow, a great opportunity comes along, and we've been blessed with so many great opportunities. Just, you know, we have to pinch ourselves someday to even look back at where we started and where we've come. It's almost hard to believe, but again, divinely led, and the opportunities that have been presented to us, and having a team that's willing to jump in and pivot.
And so many angels, so many angel donors seeing the needs and supporting us. And, you know, from the $1 donations to the very large donations, everyone is appreciated because we know the love that comes from that support, and it means so much to us. It's really what keeps us going and motivated.
Yeah. And it says something to me, at least, that there are some donors who have been there since the beginning, who have been donating to Houston PetSet because they see the results of their donations. They see the fruits of their labor, of our labor, which not, you know, sometimes you make a donation and you don't know where that dollar went. You don't know if it actually made an impact, but with such a fairly hyper-local focus, Houston PetSet is really able to show, yes, you donated this money and this is exactly where this money went. And here are the results.
I like our data collection because we can look and we know that with the $440,000 that we granted last year to rescue groups, we know how many animals were touched. We know how many people were touched and rescue groups were touched. So I like that data collection that we haven't always done, but we really strive to do now in turning this in, you know, bringing science into it a little bit.
And that's where the programs are important. You can measure data, you know, spay neuter, where are the majority of our animals coming from?
Mhm.
What zip codes? Do they have other animals at home? All that is so important. And it's always driving what we do.
Mhm.
Really, it's driving what we do.
And on the flip side, if we see something that we've been working on, either there's no longer a need or it's not where we can focus the majority of our efforts, or we're not being efficient enough with our dollars, it's okay to say someone else is doing that, doing a great job. Let's focus on what we can do really well.
Yes.
And there's a benefit in us being in programs. We have learned so much through our spay neuter, through our transport, through helping animals in the community. From it, we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't help in legislation. We wouldn't be as effective if we weren't skilled in the programs that we're running right now. And it feels like a really you can't measure some things, and that's one of those things that's immeasurable.
If I were a legislator and I had someone talking to me who wasn't actually doing what they were talking about, I wouldn't take them as seriously.
Exactly. I was going to say that it drives our conversations when it comes to legislation and when it comes to looking at who's going to lead our city, our county, and our state. And so if we have that information, we can talk intelligently about what the needs are and who's really serious about solving this problem. And it helps us a lot, especially when we go to the city and the county. We know that we can tell them this is what's needed. We can tell what's making an impact through our rescue groups and Houston PetSet programs. This is making the largest impact. Now let's get you on board to do the same thing.
And back to data collection. We know how much it costs average to spay neuter a cat.
Because we're doing
Male,
it.
female. Yeah. Dogs. We know what it takes to do it in a mobile unit. We know what it takes to do it in bricks and mortar, transport, cost per animal, all of that. It continues to drive solutions. And that's where we're different. That's why Houston PetSet is unique, because we are focused on solving this. And some people have laughed in our faces. You know your names. Watch
No
us.
shade, but we know who you are.
Just watch us, because we will solve this. We will get to manageable populations in our lifetime. And we're building an organization that will be sustained, through our new young professionals program, young executives program, all of that. It's building up a business, truly.
Absolutely. I want to shift gears slightly. And I know you've been talking about this for the past year, so you can just rattle all of this off without even thinking about it. But you did recently accomplish an incredible feat with the release of the documentary For the Animals. And it has received international acclaim, which for a tiny little group in a big city, but in a small community of animal welfare, that's a very big deal. So I'd love to hear, we know that it was an emotional experience, but I'd love to hear what you feel like you learned through that process. And if you plan on doing anything like that again.
We both are emotional about that. I don't know why.
I know.
I think it was a process. I think it was so cathartic in a way, like years of trauma that we know the rescue groups take on much more than we have. But going through that process and being on the streets was just, oh God, it's just so hard, and all the emotions that it drug up was difficult. And I think the rescue group had the same reaction when they saw it. But hopefully it was a little cathartic and hopeful, giving them hope too.
I think, again, it's one of those divinely led things that we had wanted to do a documentary for years, and the way that it came about with meetings of two women that did a documentary on human trafficking, the way that it all unfolded was really divine. And again, it's one of those things that happened because we're the right place, the right time, and someone was looking out for us, whether it's our dad or God or angels or whomever. But we can't take a lot of credit for it. We really credit the filmmakers, the Sid Hawley, Anabuti, Marcus, Makayo, the street feeders. They are the ones that made this story interesting. And we're very proud of it. It's been viewed in 56 countries. The trailer's been viewed by more than 150,000 people. We just, we were on the long list for an Academy Award in the documentary category. We just found out that we've been selected to be a DVD.
Wow.
So we just found that out this week.
How
that
exciting.
Of all the movies that are documentaries that are out there, they believe that there's a need for us to be in Walmarts and Best Buy, Target, places where you buy DVDs, Amazon.
Yeah.
So our movie will be available for purchase. So,
Well, that's exciting.
yeah, it's the little engine that could.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know we talked about, there are so many follow-ups to the stories of the specific stories that happened in the film, but also the larger plot line of what's happening in the city now that we've got this new administration. Because you talk with then State Senator John Whitmire, who is now our city mayor.
Yeah.
So there's a whole other storyline to follow because now he has the power to do things locally here at Park. So are you, exclusive? Are you planning on doing a part 2, or are you working on something else in the documentary world?
We actually are. Yes. It all came together, thankfully, before the podcast, because I'm not sure what the answer would have been before, but
TBD.
now, yes, but now we can say that we have a plan, a pretty solid plan, an outline of what the next few months, years look like, and that there is a follow-up. And we will begin filming very shortly. We've already started filming. We have started filming. Yeah. And we've got a timeline, etc. We also have screenings going on still, and still have requests internationally to show this. And so, yeah, this is the little engine that could.
It hasn't died down yet.
No. And we're really so excited about the next movie, because we learned so much along the way. And Tena and I were just kind of at the mercy of the filmmakers and Marcus, the videographer, who was brilliant. And, we just did our thing and they did theirs, and it came together. But I feel like now we've all learned a lot, and we'll be back out to talk to the street feeders and keep these stories going. So we're so excited.
I know so many people, I think the feedback that we saw locally and even, branching out, but people working in animal welfare, was they finally felt seen and heard, that somebody was telling their story that they have been living out for years and years and years and been ignored by local government, been ignored. And so this took their story, and it was the everyman in animal welfare, which is very, very important.
I'm glad you brought that up, because of all the screenings we did LA, Minneapolis, Austin, London. The scariest one for us was Houston, because it was local rescue people on the streets, experts in this field. And we were so nervous for them to see us.
Plus, we had 3 hours of sleep. Because our flight was delayed coming back from LA. And we literally went home, slept an hour, changed, and showed up and,
basically
scared.
awake for 48 hours and had to buy different tickets. Thank God for our friend Rob that got us tickets out of Denver. It was a nightmare. Anyway, we were not going to miss that one. But we were most nervous about that one because we have so much reverence for the people that are on the streets doing this hard work. I don't know how they do it every day. I don't know how their hearts have stayed intact. And those are the people that we respect and we love, and we did it for, truly.
It was so hard, I remember. Yes, being so afraid. And did we do right by you? Was basically, did we do okay? Did we tell your story? Did we capture this in the right way? It wasn't about us too much, because we really wanted it to be about the animals. The filmmakers insisted that it be about people too. But, like Tena said, their opinion mattered the most.
Seems like it went over well.
Yes.
So thank goodness.
They approved of our rescue of Oz. I was like,
They did not approve. They just said, you did okay.
Oh, yeah.
But you got him, which was the point. And that was another thing about doing the film, just being vulnerable. Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing sometimes. I mean, in so many areas.
There's imposter syndrome everywhere.
You put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking ahead, about this documentary, which is so exciting. But when we're looking at short term in this coming year, our 20th year of Houston PetSet, what are some key goals that you have for this year? And you can, I do want to tease our soiree a little bit because we have our date.
Yes.
We're going to make announcements soon about everything. But we also have legislation focuses and we have fundraising focuses. So what are some key goals that people can look forward to coming from Houston PetSet?
I think fundraising. We intend to raise more than ever before. It is our 20th birthday, our 20th soiree, September 6th. So
Pat Green.
Pat Green, yeah.
This is an exclusive. We had this. Okay, so
Oh, did I just?
No. This is the timing is perfect. I didn't want to say anything if we didn't want to share it, but we
Look at
do.
our head over
So-
there. What's your name? Head of.
This is exclusive here on Conversations for the Animals. We have a concert for our soiree this year. We didn't want to, I'm not saying the other soirees haven't been amazing, but we wanted to do something extra special. So we're having a concert and we're having Texas country superstar Pat Green, who is coming. He's an animal lover himself and he's coming to join us, which is going to make it an extra special vibe, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
Still
And
going to
we
be
love
glitz
that
and
he's
glim.
from Texas
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it's about Texas. It's about Houston. I think our auctioneers are also really fabulous, internationally known. They're from Texas. So we really wanted to keep it central
Yes.
and also recognize another little break, recognize some key individuals in the city
Yeah.
who have made a difference in animal welfare for Houston PetSet. So it will be the biggest and the best. We're so excited.
We'll be back at the Post Oak,
Yes,
of course.
we
'cause
love
it's
it
such
there.
a phenomenal venue. Talk a little bit. You teased it. Talk a little bit about the individuals we're going to be recognizing. I think this is the first time Houston PetSet has done this type of honoree for a soiree. So it's our 20 for 20.
Yep.
So give us a few details about what that's going to look like.
We wanted to recognize those who have shaped animal welfare. So many came before us. So many important people helped pave the way for animal welfare in Houston. And so what we are doing this year is the 20 for 20. We are recognizing 20 people who've been most influential in Houston in terms of shaping how animal welfare has gone.
And I just had an idea. So don't let me forget it. I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay. We'll make
Will
a
you
note of
remember?
this
Make
moment.
a note. No, that's why I'm telling you
Keegan
guys.
is going to help us. You're going to remind us. There are enough brains in this room that we
It's
can
for
remember.
number 18 and 19.
18 and 9. Okay, perfect.
Because we've asked a few individuals in the community. We've gotten us.
We're still
Yes.
filling out our 20 for 20. So if
I
anyone wants to
know.
do something
It's such a
amazing,
hard
Or
list.
nominate someone.
Or nominate someone.
Yes, please nominate somebody. We are working very hard and diligently to pick the people who really have shaped Houston PetSet and thus helped the rescue groups, and the rescue groups help the animals. So, but yes, we're open to suggestions, and I have an idea.
well, and what
Two ideas.
Two ideas.
Two ideas.
No, one
What-
idea for 2 spots. Okay, yeah.
for 2. Okay, perfect. What I love also is that it runs the gamut who we're honoring. It's not just the
Yes.
people who have donated the most. It's not, we have people who are part of rescue all the way up to people who have made immeasurable financial impact.
Yeah.
And so personally, I am just excited for us to start sharing these names because these are people who, like you said, they've helped shape Houston PetSet, but by degree, also everybody within the city of Houston, well
Yes.
beyond.
Well put. Yeah.
Very much so. Okay, so my favorite last question to ask is where you get to get a little bit creative, which is the blank check question. When you work in nonprofit, there is no such thing as a blank check. But if somebody said, I will give you as much money as you need to solve something, what would you put that money toward? What would you do with
Me?
unlimited funds?
Unlimited funds.
And it could be multiple things,
Yes,
of course.
I would look at our pillars, our 6 pillars, and I think there's 3 areas that I would choose to really focus on: spay and neuter, advocacy, even though we can't advocate because we're a 501c3, but we can help shape laws, public policy, etc.
Yeah.
I think those 2 are super important. And then the third one comes from my heart, and that is helping families and rescue groups in the emergency fund category, because we really do know how dogs, pets, whatever pet it is, become a family member. And sometimes the expenses of that family member become too great for a rescue group or a family to take on. So I love that we're able to support these families and these rescue groups with emergency funds. Thank God for our angel donors who believe in that cause too.
Yeah. I will say personally, that's one of my favorite things that we do
Yeah.
is helping owned pets, because traditionally in the past, if somebody couldn't afford vet care, they were pressured to surrender that pet to a rescue or to a shelter.
Yeah.
Say the only humane thing to do, since you can't take care of that pet, is give it up.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I think Houston PetSet has really led the way in changing that narrative to say, well, if this person loves this animal, that's a home. They're in a home. They have a
Yes.
home. Keep them there.
Right.
And if it means that we can save that bond, if we can keep it intact, I think that's my favorite
Yeah.
thing that we're
That's
able
good
to do
know.
for the
I
community.
didn't know that. I love
I
that.
think it's wonderful.
I have to say too, it's probably the hardest one
Mhm.
because it's the call that comes at midnight
Yep.
and a dog's been hit by a car and we've got to get team members out of bed to discuss the best vet. We've got to get payment to them. We've got to discuss how the dog's getting to them. I mean, it is one of the toughest
Yep.
categories
Yep.
and the one we put the most time into, but it's the one we can't say no to.
Well, and the money that goes into saving street animals too. We use the funds
Yep.
also to save. And Caleb, you can tell the
Sweet
story of Caleb.
Yes.
We just couldn't take it anymore. I'm in a meeting it was a meeting at Brasserie 19. I swear there were drinks involved, but it was legit.
Drinks happen at meetings. It still works.
It's the only way.
Sometimes.
But left that, had to walk out, called you,
Mhm.
called Anna Barbosa. We got to get this dog off the streets. He will freeze to death.
Yeah.
And you jumped in, you and the volunteer of the year,
Good old Bill.
go out and pick him up. And,
Yeah.
that's how it's done. But nobody realizes how much time goes into each animal. And that's not a complaint. That's factual.
It's the reality.
It's the
Yeah.
reality, and what we would do without the volunteers. But to your question, do you want to
Yes.
talk about Caleb at all?
Well, I'll give an update. So if anyone missed the Caleb story on our social media, he's the sweetest. I think he's got probably some American Bulldog in him. Big 80-something pound
Yep.
street dog
That you picked up.
that I managed to lift. Don't
Two-
skip
two
leg day.
tries.
It
Two
took-
tries.
It actually took more than 2 tries. I just
Oh.
edited it out of the video because he wouldn't stand up. It's really hard. I
That's-
hate the word dead weight.
Weight,
Yeah.
but
He was
yes,
dead.
yeah.
He didn't, it's not he didn't want to go. He just didn't know how to be lifted up.
Yeah.
But he crawled, we put him in the trunk. I have a hatchback. We put him in the back of my car.
Good
I
clarification.
didn't want to know. We're not closing him in the trunk. And Bill, who is my boyfriend, was going to sit in the back to kind of keep him back there. And that dog, that all 80 pounds of him, squeezed through the little bit of space of my back seat and the ceiling of the car to get onto his lap in the back seat. And he rode the whole way asleep in his lap while I drove, which was very distracting for me. Don't drive distracted, but I was trying to
Yeah.
get pictures at stoplights because it was so cute.
Yeah.
Somehow this dog who had a life mostly on the streets, we think he may have potentially had a home at one point because he was pretty much house trained. He knew how to walk on a leash. He had basic life skills. But he had a pretty hard life. He had a bone infection from probably getting in a fight with another dog. According to the vet, the biggest fleas she had ever seen in her life. They were like mutant fleas. So he was completely anemic. And he was fortunately for our street feeders, he was not underfed. He was getting food.
Thank you, Dion.
Who was feeding him regularly. And now because he has a little bit of, I don't want to say separation anxiety, but he really wants to be with people. So we managed to find him a place where he could stay, where he wasn't having to be in a kennel. And the trainer who he's currently staying with was having a really hard time saying no to keeping this dog. She loves him because he's such a wonderful, loving boy. So he's just one example of these animals who it takes an actual village of people.
Yeah.
And everyone kept asking us, and this part breaks my heart, but there were like 6 or 7 other dogs that we didn't pick up.
I know.
And the reason we can't is because we have to have an outcome for every one of those animals we get. Doesn't mean there's not a plan trying to be put in place, but the moral of the story is there just aren't enough people, places, dollars being contributed to this problem. And that's a perfect example. Is we could only get one of those 8 dogs that she's been taking care of.
Well, and we got him because he was severely injured.
Exactly.
He was
the other ones were very healthy.
Thank you again, Dion.
Yes,
right.
Thank you, Dion.
But
So,
I think.
go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that's why our focus is on street animals. It's about working in the shelters, making sure they're running efficiently and the best. But we've got to take care of the street animals.
Yeah.
And it feels like a wrap-up statement, but the situation on the streets has never been as bad as it is right now, even though there's been hundreds of millions by the nonprofits going into this and tens of thousands of volunteers. It's never been this bad, but we've also never been so hopeful.
Yeah.
So hopeful because of the leadership that we have now, because of Bark and how they're operating, because of people recognizing this problem and saying, yeah, we want to do something about this.
Yeah.
Can I answer the question? Okay,
please.
cool. Not ready to wrap up. If we had a blank
that was
check.
the question.
Yes.
Okay, blank check. All your points, exactly. Spay, neuter, the community service, advocacy, all of that, cruelty. We need a cruelty center. But I would, going back to being 5 years old and telling my dad that I wanted to have a dog farm, which meant a dog sanctuary. I think that would be my blank check, because we have so many older dogs. And I would take the older ones, the sick ones, the ones that don't get adopted, the ones that get euthanized in the shelters or die on the streets, and have a sanctuary, have thousands.
A nice place to go that's safe and warm. And
yes.
I'm going to add to my...
we can just spend the rest of the time talking about what we want to buy with our money.
3 things, but the 4th is bricks and mortar. Houston PetSet really needs a bricks and mortar to operate from and to really work efficiently. We work super efficient right now. I mean, we squeeze every what did Sarah said something the other day. She'll squeeze 10 cents out of a penny.
There you go.
I love that. So we squeeze 10 cents out of a penny. And but the bricks and mortar would help us be more efficient and streamline so many processes. And so bricks and mortar.
If we have any angel donors out there who want a building they want to name.
Yes. Bricks and mortar for spay, neuter, wellness. And then bricks and mortar, we've talked about it for the cruelty.
Yes.
Those cruelty victims need a place to go.
Yes.
They need to decompress. They have trauma, and we need a centralized, and we could have a whole, can we come back and talk about cruelty and talk about, we
would love that.
And also the emergency cases, which often fall under cruelty, but the emergency cases. So when you went and got Caleb, you had an outcome. You had somebody who said, I'll take it, because we can't just keep dogs in our cars and we're all full. Our houses are full. And so for the first time, Houston PetSet has had to say no. And I would say it started about 1.5 years ago. We could always say yes, but for the first time, we're saying no. But to have a place and say yes every time, say yes to those other 6 dogs that got left on the street and bring them into this bricks and mortar, it would help solve this problem.
Yeah. See, you're good at those wrap-up statements. We'll just leave all the wrap-up statements to Tana. I think it would be wonderful to come back, because there are so many different things to talk about, not just Houston PetSet, but animal welfare in general. And, we, like we said, we're very hopeful for this year. It's a good year to turn 20, I think, because we have this we can put a nice little bow on everything we've accomplished thus far, and we can look forward and say, okay, now what do we do for the next 20 years? Well, hopefully not 20, because we'll have it solved well before then. Our goal is to not have to be in existence that far ahead. But in the meantime, we can be excited about a new documentary feature coming from you two, and our soiree, which tune into our social media. We're going to have great announcements about details and everything coming up soon about that. But save the date, September 6th, 2024 at the Post Oak Hotel. Thank you both. You have the busiest schedules. Coordinating this is a challenge, but we did it. And I'm so glad we were able to get y'all in here, because I think there's no better way to kick off 2024 than by looking back and looking forward. So thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been Conversations for the Animals, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.